We're on the outskirts of Melbourne's Tullamarine Airport here in Victoria in Australia, and this is home to some of the busiest airspace here in the country and the second busiest air route between Melbourne here and Sydney in New South Wales. It's shared by planes anything as small as a Cessna 152 right up to an A380. Okay, that was a 737, but the point remains, this airspace is some of the busiest here in the country. But how do pilots know where to go and who's helping everybody up there? Yeah. Air traffic control, the main complex which is based here at Tullamarine Airport. So the airport itself is just over behind me here. You'll recognise those two things.
G'day.
So this is Peter from Airservices, who's going to be our guide for the day. Peter, what are we going to be having a look at today?
Okay, so today we'll have a look at the training facility and specifically the 360-degree training simulator, and have a look at Melbourne Centre, where we've got lots of air traffic controllers working away, looking after our country. Australia looks after 11% of the world's airspace, and that's divvied up between Melbourne and Brisbane and all the associated
Wow,
towers.
11%?
11%.
Do you know, I didn't realise that Australia's divided into the two regions.
Yeah, so if you put a diagonal roughly through Alice Springs, to the northeast, that's done by Brisbane Centre, and to the southwest, that's done by Melbourne Centre.
One of the things I was learning though is it's not, you guys don't just cover the country. It's not just the land area itself, so
Correct.
there are ocean regions
Correct.
outside
So we do
as well.
the ocean regions, so we've got oceanic airspace. It's when you get handed off to another FIR. An example that I like to give is the Dubai-Melbourne flight, approximately 14 hours, 9 of which is spent with Melbourne Centre. In the most recent year, we looked after 156 million airline passengers.
Wow. Well, we're going to take a look around today. We're going to have a better look around now with Peter. Just one question though before we start.
Sure.
Do you get distracted by all the planes? Because every time one goes past, I'm just desperately trying to look around. And
Yes, when I'm at home, I tend to run outside and have a look, but not all controllers do that. Some are desensitised to it. But
I know,
anyway.
it's good to know that you do the same
Yes.
thing. All right, well, should we take a look around? But we're going to start in the training centre.
We'll start in the training centre. Let's go. Where am I? There I am.
You haven't aged a day, Peter. It's one of the training setups that they have down here. This is the 240-degree simulator, so simulating this airport you should recognise. There's the apron. Tango Delta Sierra is probably over there somewhere. This is Moorabbin Airport. Mel, what's happening at Moorabbin today?
We've got 3 in the circuit, so as far as Moorabbin's concerned, it's a very quiet day. So we've got 1 on final, you might be able to see, another one turning base to follow as number 2, and another one just on crosswind now, that's the 3rd one in the circuit.
You're right, that's probably the quietest day
Yeah,
I think I've ever seen at Moorabbin Airport.
Airport.
The planes themselves are actually being controlled by other training controllers here at the airport?
They're not training controllers, so they're simulator support officers, so we don't control our own runs, we have people doing it for us. So we usually would have 2 students and 1 instructor. Based on Moorabbin, we do regional approach, which is...
Echo India uniform down when you touch and go.
Echo India uniform number 3, follow the Cessna on base.
Does it follow the Cessna Echo India uniform?
We do a radar tower course, which is based on Melbourne, and we do a regional approacher course, which is based on Port Hedland with Alice Springs airspace.
So who's coming in next?
We have India Tango Yankee just turning on to final now.
Okay. And so these strips represent the ordering in which the aircraft are coming in?
They do. So Kilo Oscar November's just on the runway now. He'll be airborne shortly. He's just airborne now. And India Tango Yankee, who's on final, he now becomes number 1. India Tango Yankee, clear touch and go.
Clear touch and go, India Tango Yankee.
That's not a bad landing.
Yes.
You did quite well. But roughly how long would it take from someone right from the start to get to the point where they could be managing aircraft out there?
It's probably about, if you say about an 18-month period. So the training in the initial training area where we're teaching the skills from the start is around about 12 to 14 months, and in that time that's when they earn the diploma of aviation. They'll then go out to the field and they'll train again in a simulated environment where they will practice the skills required but on the actual airspace that they're going to be tested on. And then after that they'll go into the field and actually train in the live environment with somebody always behind them making sure that they are making the right decisions, and that lasts for about 3 to 4 months until they are suitably qualified to control on their own.
If I wanted to become an air traffic controller, if I'm out there in school at the moment and I'm looking at sort of qualifications and what I should be studying, what are some of the key areas that people should focus on?
We take people with a broad range of skills and talents and education background. Because we're teaching from a base knowledge of nothing, it really doesn't matter what you have done in the past, because we will test you thoroughly to make sure you have the skills and attributes that it takes to be a controller.
If someone does want to find out more information, what's the best next step for them? Where should they go? Onto the Airservices website?
Yeah, onto the Airservices website, and if you look at the air traffic control area on the vacancies page, put your email address in, and therefore it can send you an email to let you know when the link is open again.
Well, I'll put the link below, but thank you very much.
Great.
Nice talking to you.
No
Thank
worries.
you for your
Thank
time.
you. Yeah.
So we've got the Indian Ocean on the right, Central Australia is in that same aisle, and then over here we've got Melbourne, Sydney, which is the second busiest route in the world. We've got the sectors underneath them, which I work on. In the next two aisles we have Adelaide Approach, the arrival function into Adelaide, Canberra Approach and Melbourne Approach. 50 operational consoles in this room. Approximately 350 controllers that work in the centre.
So we're going to take a look now at one of the actual screens that the controllers use here. So what are you guys looking at here?
So we've got Albury in the middle, Canberra and Melbourne. Green tracks are tracks that we control. Any blue track is a track that's coming our way. This aircraft here is a Seminole, PA-44. It's flying to Mangalore. Its call sign is November Charlie Echo. It's light in weight category. It's passing 4,800 feet on climb to 5,000. 120 knots ground speed, and that little B means it's ADS-B equipped. Departing Wagga, we've got a Melbourne-bound Rex aircraft. It's passing 7,800 on climb to flight level 180. 180 knots ground speed. I'll put up his route. There you go.
So where's he going?
He's going to Melbourne, so he's tracking to position Themis. And then boys.
Now we're just going to see if we can simulate an emergency situation here as well. So you know on your transponder in an aircraft, if you squawk 7700 for an emergency, what does it look like when it comes up on screen?
Okay, so I've just asked them to select radio fail score code, which is 7600, and that's how it presents itself. So when I select it, I've acknowledged the alert. It still stays for as long as the aircraft squawks radio fail. We ask the aircraft to squawk ident if they're receiving this transmission. And we'll get the indication that the ident, a blue flashing circle.
So VFR pilots who are flying around just uncontrolled airspace potentially, or around Class C airspace. Have you got any tips from air traffic control for pilots?
Some of the things that you can do is submit a flight plan. If you submit a VFAR flight plan, then it's available to us. Always ensure your transponder's on and selected to altitude so we can see in altitude. The other thing is listen out on the appropriate area frequency. And a good indicator that you're on the right frequencies, that you can actually hear aircraft talking, and they're talking about places that you're familiar with. So we've got this aircraft here near Mount Hotham Aerodrome at 8,500. So he's not identified. However, because of the shape of the actual return, which is an hourglass, we know that aircraft's squawking 1200. So most likely he's VFR, and it looks as if he's heading towards Albury.
I've crowdsourced a couple of questions as well. I put out on my Facebook and Twitter accounts just some of the questions that pilots and travellers wanted to ask air traffic control. So Dravid asks, he said, were any of the controllers here, were any of them pilots before?
Yeah, I was a pilot before I started ATC. That was my interest. I moved on to ATC, but we have many pilots that become ATCs, and some ATCs that have become pilots in the past as well.
Nick asks, Nick says, what do you think of the movie Pushing Tin?
451, turn left heading 060, expedite. I must be losing my mind.
Repeat that control.
Negative, United, that was not you.
I liked it up to the midway point. Sure, there's a bit of Hollywood spice in it. We don't go around pushing each other's motorbikes over if we're not happy with each other. But it tried to replicate what actually happens, and they seem to work a lot less hours than we do. But
Bloody Hollywood. Ben has asked, how often does an aircraft call tower instead of ground? For example, how often do you get Essendon Tower when it's Melbourne Centre? And
well,
so on?
the example that we give is we keep getting called Brisbane Centre instead of Melbourne Centre. We just keep reiterating Melbourne Centre till they change their mind.
So you don't mind too much?
No.
It's not a problem, really.
No, not a problem.
Let people know.
Not a problem.
Stephen's asked, this is a good question actually, and I was wondering this when I come down because I fly around here quite a lot and I've never known this. Stephen, good question. Why are there two towers here at Melbourne?
So the new tower's been built and operational. The old tower is at its base multiple buildings that are used for other purposes. Once those functions are relocated to new premises, then that will allow the old tower to be removed.
Finish on this question. I really like this one. This is a very important question. Mustafa, thank you for this one. He says, have you got any tips for new student pilots to get over the fear of talking to you scary people at air traffic control?
Yeah, we're not that scary. My recommendation is you take time, think about what you're going to say, wait for a pause on the frequency, and then state what you want to ask. And if we don't answer you immediately, it doesn't necessarily mean that we haven't heard you.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because I know sometimes I have called air traffic control and I don't get a response back. Yeah. And for new pilots, that's quite worrying because you start to think, am I on the wrong frequency? Have I done something wrong?
We know you've called and we'll get back to you. If we haven't responded to you in a reasonable amount of time, try again and wait for a response.
Great. Brilliant. All right, thank you, Peter. I have to run now. I've got some other flying for myself to do. Thank you for your time. If you've got any more questions that you might want to ask Air Services, Air Traffic Control, Peter specifically as well, put them in the comments below.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. It's really nice to meet you.
No
I'll
worries.
Catch you soon. Thank you, Peter. See you later. That was really cool. That was really nice having a good look around. At least now I know when I'm flying the Cirrus next time and I'm talking to the guys at Melbourne Centre, I can put some faces to the names or faces to the voices, or you know what I mean.